Rain whispered against the cracked glass of the third-floor window, the sound merging with the low hum of the city far below. Daniel leaned against the peeling wall of his new apartment, arms folded tight against his chest. The place smelled faintly of damp wood and something metallic, like a rusted pipe or old coins left in a puddle. It had been a week since he'd moved in. The building was a faded brick relic from the early 1900s, the kind of place with warped floors and doors that never fully closed. It was cheap, which was all he needed after his breakup left him scraping together the last of his savings. The landlord had been eager, too eager, to hand over the keys, mumbling something about quiet tenants and minimal disturbances. For the first 3 nights, the apartment had been silent. Then came the footsteps. They began at exactly 2:13 a.m. Daniel would wake, never sure if he had truly been asleep, and hear them, slow, deliberate pacing directly above his ceiling. The apartment above was supposedly vacant. He'd asked the landlord on day 1 and been told, no one's lived up there since winter. But the steps were heavy enough to make the ceiling boards groan. Tonight, the sound returned. Thud, thud, thud. He sat upright in bed, his heart already pounding as though his body had been waiting for it. The footsteps moved from one end of the ceiling to the other, paused, then reversed. Back and forth, steady as a metronome. Daniel's mind churned. He told himself it was pipes or old wood contracting with the cold night air. But pipes didn't change direction, and wood didn't pause like it was. Listening. He slid out of bed, the warped floor cool beneath his bare feet, and crossed to the window. Outside, the alley was still, shadows pooling between overflowing dumpsters. The rain had slowed to a mist, giving the street lamps a halo glow. Everything looked normal, too normal for the unease gnawing at him. From above, the pacing stopped. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The air felt heavier, as though the walls had leaned in closer. Then, without warning, something dragged across the floor upstairs, a long, scraping sound like a chair being pulled. He clenched his jaw. Screw this. Grabbing his hoodie, he stepped into the dim hallway. The old light bulbs flickered overhead, buzzing faintly. The staircase to the 4th floor was narrow, its railing splintered and sticky under his hand. Every step groaned, as if warning him to turn back. At the top, he found the door to the upstairs apartment closed, its paint blistered from years of neglect. He knocked once, twice, each rap echoing too loudly in the hallway. Silence. He turned the knob. It moved easily, but the door didn't open. It felt as if something on the other side was holding it shut. He pushed harder, the hinges whining until the gap widened just enough for him to peer inside. The room was dark, but not completely. A thin silver light spilled in from the window, revealing dust hanging thick in the air. The walls were bare, except for a single deep scratch running diagonally across the plaster. The smell hit him then, a pungent, cloying rot that made his stomach twist. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but curiosity pinned him in place. He stepped inside. The floorboards were coated in dust, yet in the center of the room, a trail of clean footprints led toward the far corner. They stopped in front of what looked like an old wardrobe, its door slightly ajar. Daniel's breath quickened. The wardrobe shifted, just slightly, enough to creak. He took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone. But before he could move farther, the door to the wardrobe creaked open wider. Darkness yawned inside, impossibly deep. And then, 2 pale hands emerged, gripping the frame. Daniel froze, every muscle locking. The hands were thin, almost skeletal. The nails cracked and blackened. They tightened on the wood, and a face leaned into the light, a face that should have been impossible. It was waterlogged, skin swollen and split in places, dark hair plastered to its skull. The eyes were open, but clouded over, milky and unseeing. The thing smiled. Daniel stumbled backward, hitting the door frame, but before he could turn, it was moving toward him, not walking, but lurching forward in jerks, like it was being pulled by invisible strings. He bolted down the hallway, his breath ragged, the sound of its dragging steps echoing behind him. The stairwell loomed ahead, and he took the steps 2 at a time, the railing rattling under his grip. Halfway down, the building seemed to shift. The lights flickered, the air pressure dropped, and from somewhere deep inside the walls, a whisper slithered into his ears. "Don't leave." He didn't stop until he was back in his apartment, slamming the door and shoving a chair under the knob. His heart thundered, his hands shaking as he pressed his back to the wall. Above him, the footsteps resumed. Only this time, they didn't pace. They stopped directly over his bed. Daniel stood motionless, every nerve in his body braced for something to happen. The chair wedged under the door handle felt like a flimsy shield against whatever was upstairs. His breath rasped loud in the small apartment, almost drowning out the sound above. Almost. The footsteps above his bed didn't move. They stayed planted in the same spot, directly over where his head would be if he dared lie down. He glanced toward his phone on the counter, but his legs refused to carry him. It wasn't paralysis. It was the sick certainty that if he made a sound, the thing upstairs would know exactly where he was. Then the sound changed. The slow, deliberate thuds became a dragging scrape. Wood on wood, like something impossibly heavy was being pulled toward the edge of the upstairs floor. Daniel's mind conjured an image before he could stop it. The swollen, grinning figure crouched on the boards, listening, then inching closer to the exact spot above him. Drop of something dark spattered the ceiling. Daniel's head tilted up slowly. The plaster above the bed, directly where the footsteps had been, now showed a faint, wet stain, and it was spreading. A smell followed, brackish, sweet, and suffocating, like rotting flowers left in stagnant water. His stomach turned. He had to get out. He moved for the door, but before his hand could reach the chair, the light bulb above him flickered violently, buzzing in protest, then popped with a sharp crack. The room plunged into darkness. Daniel's breath hitched. Somewhere, not above, but inside his apartment now, a faint sloshing sound began, like bare feet stepping in shallow water. "Who's there?" His voice came out hoarse, trembling. Silence. Then, from the far corner, a wet inhale. Daniel's instincts screamed, and he lunged for the door, wrenching the chair away and yanking the knob. The hallway light outside cast a narrow beam into the room, but it was enough to reveal the figure. It was standing in the far corner, hunched, its head tilted unnaturally low. Water dripped from its hair in slow, rhythmic droplets that pattered against the warped floor. Its face, still swollen and split, twitched into that same horrific grin, though its eyes rolled strangely, as if they were searching for him without focus. Then it moved, not toward the door, up the wall. Daniel's scream lodged in his throat as it scuttled onto the ceiling, limbs bending at wrong angles, body twisting until it was directly above him. Water rained down in thin, cold splashes, hitting his face. "Mine," it croaked, the word bubbling through what sounded like a throat full of water. Daniel bolted into the hall, feet pounding the stairs. He didn't care about the neighbors, didn't care if he broke his neck. He just needed to be outside. The air was cold when he finally burst into the alley, rain slicking his hoodie, but he didn't stop until he was in the street, gasping, turning back toward the building. The windows on the top floor were dark, except one. The window directly above his bedroom glowed faintly, and in it, pressed against the glass, was that face, upside down, grinning, its pale hand leaving a streak of moisture as it dragged slowly down the pane. Daniel didn't return to the building. Not that night, not the next. By the time he came back with police and the landlord, the upstairs apartment was still locked and thick with dust. No footprints, no smell, no water damage on the ceiling. But in the center of Daniel's bedroom floor, they found a single puddle, perfectly round and still dripping, as if something had just left.